it from one particular angle of view, and then you can come to your own idea about the matter. Mr. Yu Kwok Him, any illegal acts, any acts of violence should be condemned. In the past dozen of days, we can see that the police have been very professional and they have been very restrained in coping with the provocations. However, in the course of it, there have been physical scuffles. Last night, I watched the live broadcast. I could see for myself that some protesters were trying and were ready to use umbrellas to assault the police officers. And then there was a voiceover telling them that they were being captured on the screen, and so they became very restrained. So for those who held up their hands, might not always be peaceful all the time. And today, I think some media also captured what happened. That is, some law enforcing policemen had used inappropriate and unlawful force or violence. It is said that it will be subject to thorough investigation. Now, individual police officers might have done something that tarnished the reputation of the police force. This isn't what we want to see. But then I hope the Secretary can answer the following question. In recent days, organizations and individuals have been affected by the Occupy Central movement. Their livelihood have been affected, so they took the initiative to go to the protest sites to clear the sites. I want to know what the police is going to do and how you're going to do it. Will the police simply stop those who are taking the initiative to remove the illegal blockades, the barricades, etc.? Secretary, allow me to say a few words first. Today, at the press conference, the police already said that for the incident that took place at Long Wall Road, 4 police officers were injured. One had a joint dislocated, and another officer had his eye corner injured. It is a fact. Mr. Yip said that the majority of the public have reacted to the Occupy Central movement in such a way that some members of the public took the initiative to go to the protest sites to clear the site. Well, we don't want members of the public to do so on their own initiative. This is because at the scene, it is easy for both opposing teams or opposing camps to have confrontation, and then there will be physical scuffles, and this may lead to injuries. We don't want to see this happen. The police would like to be unbiased in dealing with the incident, whether they are people in favor of or opposing the Occupy Central movement. We don't want anybody to be engaged in illegal activities. Please don't act unlawfully. The police will do its utmost, and in due course and at appropriate moments will remove the barricades so as to restore the normal traffic flow. In the past few days, celebrities and community leaders and school authorities, etc., have personally go to the scenes of protests, asking the protesters to leave and remove their barricades. Unfortunately, their sincere pleadings have not yielded any results. The police have also taken action so as to clear the blockades on the road and have reopened a number of trunk roads. This will go on until in Hong Kong all the roads will become normal again. So once again, let me appeal to the members of the public. Please don't take your own initiative to deal with the problem. Please leave it to the police to carry out the clearance of the blockades. Mr. Poon, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The initiators of Occupy Central told us that he would like to occupy Central with love and peace. Now, Admiralty, Causeway Bay, and Mong Kok have been occupied. There have been conflicts, confrontations, and injuries. There's no love, no peace. Livelihood and our daily living have been affected. Now, many people are worried about the 2-week-long Occupy Central movement. It is worried that this may go on just forever. It has been said that appropriate action will be carried out at an appropriate timing. I want to know when the government is going to reopen all the roads so that the employees can go back to their normal lives. Reopen the roads ASAP so that citizens in Hong Kong, including the employees mentioned by Mr. Poon, can resume their normal life is our common wish. In the past, we've already done some work and will continue with that. Now, if we are able to do anything swiftly, let me appeal to the protesters once again. For your aspirations, for your requests, they are loud and clear. Please leave. Please go away from the protest areas. When the police clear the blockades, please do not prevent the operation so that the operation can be carried out smoothly. 2 days ago, in the Central, in the Queensway, in Causeway Bay, the police were able to remove some blockades so as to restore normal traffic. This operation has to be sustained, as the chairman, as the member had said, so as to restore normal traffic flow. So here, let me say this once again. I would like to appeal once again.
First, people have occupied our roads. Please leave as soon as possible. And when the police clear these obstacles to open up our trunk roads, please be cooperative and do not obstruct the police operation. Mr. Chen Kim-po, thank you, President. Yesterday, the police gradually cleared the obstacles and regained control over Long Wall Road. I'm sure the majority of the community applauded that. Unfortunately, we've seen clips of the police assaulting arrested persons. We urge the police to investigate individual incidents in accordance with the law. I urge the media and the community not to smear the police because it is very unfair to the entire force. Most youngsters and students are peaceful. However, many radical protesters have mixed with the crowd. Can you please come to your question? I have to state the background, but I'll come to my question as soon as possible. The police have been very tolerant, and frontline officers have encountered great difficulties, and they've been on duty for a long time. They're under great pressure, and they are verbally assaulted by the public. Now they are so frustrated and insulted. I'm someone with my property and everything in Hong Kong. I think if our police are frustrated, it's a nightmare. I ask the administration how it is maintaining the morale of the force and how you can ensure that frontline officers can vent their frustration. Secretary for Security. The force itself is very concerned about this matter. The current operation is very complex, difficult and unprecedented. The administration fully understands and appreciates the sentiments of our frontline officers, and we are concerned about that. The management of the force have explained to different staff associations to show their appreciation for the difficulties and how the operation will proceed. We have to stress that it is the force duty to maintain law and order and to protect the safety of the public. No matter how challenging their work is, I have every confidence that the whole force will do their level best to fully accomplish their mission. The work of the police need the support of the community and all walks of life here. Many protesters have chanted verbal abuse and physical assault and some very rude behavior towards our frontline officers. Such behavior will certainly dampen police morale. However, I firmly believe that everyone in the police force will do their utmost and they will discharge their duties without fear or favor. They will discharge their duties accordingly. The force has got clinical psychologists. When necessary, police colleagues will be given assistance from these psychologists. And the most important thing is the administration renders full support to the police for carrying out their duties. And I appeal to legislators here and all sectors of the community to support, to recognize and understand the duties of the force and help them to handle the matter together. Different sectors of the community have recently expressed their appreciation to the force, and that is a great encouragement. Mr. Chan Kim-po, may I ask the Secretary to convey our support to the force from everyone in the community. We do support them to uphold the rule of law here. Mr. Chen Kam-lam, as we can see from reports, since the illegal occupation took off in late September, protesters have been using umbrellas to poke at police officers, to charge police officers, causing them injuries. And they even hurled articles at police officers. This morning, we saw an incident on the TV where protesters poured some liquid to police officers on duty. And I think things are getting worse from what we can see. A few days ago, we saw scaffolding on roads. And the situation is very serious. It's causing our law and order to deteriorate. We see most police officers concentrating their efforts on dealing with such matters. And I think members of the public are concerned as to whether our police power would be affected and won't be able to handle other law and order situations. Secretary, you appealed to protesters time and again. You asked them to disperse voluntarily and peacefully. But what if they don't? And if the social impact of the occupation persists, what should we do? Ordinary members of the public cannot resume their normal daily life. Businessmen have their businesses affected. Employees are also threatened. What can we do? Does the Secretary have any quick solution to these matters? There are voices in the community that there is a limit to tolerance. Secretary for Security, illegal occupation enters the 18th day, if I remember correctly. I think the social impacts are obvious for all to see. Its continuance will not just affect our livelihood, our economy, and other matters. As Mr. Greg So said, our exhibition, our trade, and also our overseas buyers have asked whether they should continue to come to Hong Kong to or take part in trade and commercial activities. Everyone in Hong Kong would like to see an early end to the occupation. The protesters first claimed that they would only occupy Central after they've caused a traffic disruption, and when the police cleared the ground, they would leave. And should there be any chaos, they would stop the movement. Unfortunately, things have not developed as they anticipated earlier. The police would do its utmost to maintain order in society. What we would do first and foremost, and that is what we're doing now, is to clear the barriers so that we can resume normal traffic. If necessary, the force may carry out necessary operations, and they will give due warning to the protesters present, urging them to leave first. We hope that people who have occupied our roads can sit down, stay calm, and think about this. Hong Kong is our home. We have sufficient channels for expression of opinion. Is it really necessary for them to stay on affecting this home, affecting our daily lives? The police will do its utmost, will do its level best, using the most appropriate means to handle this matter. However, the support of everyone in the community is equally important. I really hope that the community can understand the hardship of the police and also the objective of their work. They are not really mobster cops, as claimed by some. And it's really not that they have colluded with some parties to do something. Well, the police have only one objective in their work, and that is to maintain law and order in the society in accordance with the law. And to ensure law and order, they need the cooperation and support of the community as well.
Only if we have the cooperation with the public would we be able to maintain the law and order in Hong Kong. All along, Hong Kong upholds the rule of law, and I believe that the public do not agree to illegal actions or do not approve of such acts. I hope that the Occupy Central protesters can calm down and have second thoughts. It's time that you should leave. Thank you, President. Mr. Yu Ziwing. Thank you, President. It's almost the 20th day when the movement first broke out. A lot of public and commercial activities have been forced to be cancelled or adjusted, including the fireworks to celebrate the 1st of October and also a food and wine festival. Hong Kong's international image has been tarnished and tourism's income has also been affected. My question is for the CEDB. How many international activities have been affected recently because of the OCM? Are there any remedial measures by the government to minimize losses suffered by the business community? Thank you, President. It's easy to do damage, but it's hard to make amends. Hong Kong is a tourist destination. We have good reputation. We have a good business environment. But then the OCM has dealt a blow to our reputation. And what we should do is to minimize such damage. And we don't want to see it developing from a short-term damage to long-term damage. We need time to develop tourism, and we need support facilities, including the city as a whole. Mr. Yu is right in saying that the food and wine, because of the OCM, and it has been relocated to Kai Tak from the central and western promenade at the runway at the Kai Tak. And some merchants have said that they will withdraw from the activity. We are trying to come up with remedial measures to attract more participants to go to Kai Tak. In the long term, President, we are also planning for a number of major international events, and preparation takes time. We have to make planning for a long time and well in advance. So the best approach is to stop such destructive acts, the OCM, so that we can plan for our tourist and other facilities in the medium, and long term. Mr. Alan Leung, 87 canisters of tear gas on the 28th of September. Who is to be held responsible? It seems that we don't have an answer. Mr. President, you must have heard that Mrs. Carrie Lam said that she is, so to speak, an outsider. And then she said that C.Y. Leung knew about the situation. And there were even reports saying that the think tank of C.Y. Leung is not the secretary, but John Lee. So what is the process of making the decision in firing the tear gas? C.Y. Leung said that he had participated in the overall situation, and the firing of the tear gas was made, that decision was made by the frontline commander. So there are so many different versions of the story. So can you give me an answer? What is the process of making that decision of firing the tear gas? Who participated in that decision? Secretary, the police had stringent guidelines on use of force. The frontline commander made that decision based on the actual situation and made a professional judgment. So there is no need to get instruction from the supervisor, and the senior government, including the CY Leung, the CE, had been closely watching over the situation. A few days ago, SMP had carried a report. On an interview on the firing of tear gas that day. So members may refer to that for reference. Mr. Hon Kwok Ka-ki, President. Oh, so many members have already asked. Somebody else may have already asked my question, but irrespectively, I will still ask again on tear gas. The secretary, in his reply, said that is a common type of gear for tackling storming of protesters. Well, from what the media and the protesters said, they said that tear gas was like a grenade. It's a serious an act. So we have to look at the results to determine whether that was really serious. Now, on the 28th of September, after the tear gas was fired, how many people got injured? Do you have a number? And among those injured, how many of them sustained injuries because of the tear gas? And what is their condition? And is there any sort of aftermath of the tear gas injury? Well, the tear gas will only cause short-term uncomfort, and there is no permanent sort of injury involved. Tear gas and pepper spray are considered by the police to be able to sort of dissuade people from storming in. The tear gas used by the Hong Kong police is the type similar to tear gas used by other forces in other countries. We got that from the supplier, and it would create people to have sort of tears, and they would feel heat, and they would cough, and then they would have tears and so on. So their ability to move about will also be reduced or hampered. So the discomfort continues for a short while, just a few minutes. As to the figures on whether protesters, as a result of inhaling tear gas, are still being treated, no, there is no. I believe there is none. But there is one thing that I'm sure, and that is on the 28th and 29th of September. Well, people who had to be treated at the hospitals, their injury is not that serious. We have two figures. On the 28th of September, there were 24 people injured. 29th of September, 10 people were injured. So there are tens of thousands of protesters, and after the tear gas was fired, the number of people injured is just around 20 or 10. So this goes to show that the effect of the tear gas. Mr. Martin Liao, President, OCM has continued for half a month, and the impact on Hong Kong's economy is being felt. And CEOs of banking industry told me that, according to some international media, investors, the interest in investing in Hong Kong has been tempered, and they don't want to set up Hong Kong as a business headquarters. And the credit rating, well, we have to rebuild confidence in credit rating for several years. And lawyers, they said that some of their friends refused to come to Hong Kong for safety reasons, and the business might be lost. Our commercial hotel, Mandarin Hotel, well, it should be at its peak in terms of occupancy rate, but now it's just got an occupancy rate of 50%. Now the government has been promoting how the advantages of Hong Kong.
But then people's confidence in Hong Kong has been shaken, and if the movement continues, then that would only further shaken the international community's long-term confidence in Hong Kong, and that would only affect our overall business environment. So my question for the Secretary for Economic Development is, what measures will be taken by the administration to salvage the confidence of the international community in Hong Kong in doing business in Hong Kong? Secretary, as I said, it's always easy to destroy things than rebuilding it. So in this respect, our ETOs and also Invest Hong Kong have been working closely with the TDC to inform our trade partners that the business environment in Hong Kong continues to be good. But then when they see footages on TV about OCM and also the conflicts, that would definitely dampen their desire to invest in Hong Kong. And I've repeatedly said that the solution to the problem is for the activists to retreat early so that we can restore order to the community, so that the long-term business environment will still give our investors confidence. And as I just said, we have taken a series of measures. For example, we are trying to help the SMEs in getting funds to run their business. And as far as the HKCEC is concerned, because of the inconvenience caused to traffic, some outside MICE participants and exhibition participants have been offered concessions in order to boost their confidence, and it's hard to say what kind of long-term effects there will be if the OCM continues. I think we will have to take appropriate measures in due course in order to reduce the loss. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, are you here?
All right, can you move the cardboard a little bit so that I can see you more clearly? Yes, sure. My apologies, Mr. Deputy. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The root of the Occupy Central Movement, that's because of the NPCSC's decision on the 31st of August, closing the gate to true democracy. That's why it's a political conflict, and it can only be resolved politically. But then the chief executive has become a videotaping man after this, and he has taken no action. And the police have become a tool for political suppression, and the police have not been enforcing the law fairly, and they've been using tear gas against peaceful demonstrators. And last night, they actually showed themselves to be someone who are taking laws into their own hands, and they are abusing their powers by assaulting the demonstrators. So I'd like to ask the administration, have you faced up to the problem, resulting in a police force having some negative emotions or even some negative sentiments, or they might have this sentiment against the demonstrators, and are there measures to ease such pressure in order to ensure that they'll be able to enforce the law more effectively? Secretary for Security, Mr. Deputy, in dealing with the incident, the police have repeatedly deployed negotiators to try and communicate with the demonstrators, asking them to give way and reopen the roads so that for people who have been affected by the blockage of traffic will feel less disturbed and less inconvenienced, so that the loss that might be incurred could be minimized. The police have put in a lot of efforts, as you can see from the footages. Well, during the initial period of the movement, we have already deployed negotiators to deal with the incident. But then, regrettably, up till now, we have not been able to achieve any result. The Occupy movement, resulted in activists blocking the roads. This is something that none of us would like to see, and as a result, the community as a whole is paying a heavy price, and that's also for all to see. Now is the time for the demonstrators to leave. For those of you here, if we can all work together to lobby them, I can still remember there were many opinion leaders in there are many opinion leaders in Hong Kong. There are many community leaders. They have all come forward to give advice to these demonstrators, and yet regrettably, Harcourt Road up till this very moment is occupied by these activists and demonstrators. Police officers are not like what some members have described. We are not the tools for suppression. Police officers have to keep their cordon line to avoid any charging by the demonstrators. And why they have to do this, I've repeatedly said that, and I'm sure you've heard that many times, and therefore I don't propose to repeat that again here. Let me stress that the policemen or the police have never condoned to the actions taken by the anti-Occupy activists. But then, for people who have been affected by the movement, what would they feel? Well, yesterday I saw a footage, and there was an elderly man who must be in his 90s. He was kneeling on the ground, and he was pleading with the occupiers or the demonstrators that they should leave. But then it was a futile attempt. So many quarters of a community, many different people from different quarters have come forward to plead with the demonstrators without yielding any result. So whoever tied the knot will have to untie it. So to retreat in an orderly manner is the best way out. I hope that for those who are still occupying Harcourt Road, please think about it. Thank you. Ms. Story Lee. Mr. Deputy, last night a large group of protesters stormed Long Wall Road, blocking the road. And for those who watched the broadcast live, yes, they raised their hands, but then they were forging ahead. And in some scenes, we can see that the police officers were subject to a lot of pressure, and they've been acting in a very restrained manner. And with regard to the police managing to reopen Long Wall Road within a short space of time, we'd like to praise them for their hard work, and we don't want this to happen. I think the biggest price that we have paid is the rift in society, and as a result of the OCM, many families have had a lot of arguments, and many friends have to unfriend their friends. And for people in different quarters involved in the movement have also been engaging in a lot of conflicts, and the police have been smeared and verbally attacked and abused, and also parents, because the roads have been occupied and they have not been able to take their children to schools. So at different levels of the community, the stress and anxiety that have been felt by the community, I suspect that many are already suffering from the ACM or the OCM syndrome. So I'd like to know, with regard to the arrangements that have been put in place, have you foreseen the situation whereby many people might be suffering from this OCM syndrome, and has any preparation been made for that? Secretary for Home Affairs, during the past fortnight or so, it's not just because of the blockage of roads, which have been affecting the 3 districts. In fact, throughout the territory, all the 18 districts have received a lot of comments from members of the public. With regard to the situation that we are facing, they have expressed serious concerns, and district officers and the district officers in different districts have been playing the role of a coordinator in order to ensure that both sides would have better understanding of each other, and there should be more accommodation. And we are actually urging the demonstrators to leave as quickly as possible, and they should also abide by the order in order to cooperate with police taking enforcement action.
Mr. Deputy, in this massive event, there were Democrats, there were people from many quarters of the community that took part. We had the passionate support of the community. This has also aroused the concerns of the international media. And one of the reasons why they are concerned is because of the police. Last time they had used the tear gas, and now they're roughing up the protesters. That this is on the CNN, this is on the international media. I think this is really dealing a blow to our reputation. The secretary asked people to leave, and he said people who were held in high esteem spoke up regarding this incident. I think these people should be fair. They should really tell us whether they subscribe to the action taken by the police. We are concerned about the public safety, just as much as you do. They want to talk to you. They want to express their aspirations for a democratic system. If the government is turning a deaf ear to these people, now these well-respected people are not really speaking up in a fair manner. Why is it that the authorities refuse steadfastly to talk to the protesters and diffuse the crisis? Your question? Secretary for Security. President, I'm sure members remember that in the past 10 days or so, the Federation of Students asked for a dialogue. The government has made a response. The government made a response, and we were prepared for a meeting. Subsequently, the meeting, the dialogue was suspended. The government has already made clear the reasons. I hope that the relevant people will have a look at the situation under the current constitutional setup. How can we deal with this constitutional issue? The basic law is the constitutional document for Hong Kong, the highest document for Hong Kong. It has made clear by the NPCSC that a decision was taken by the NPCSC on the 30th of August. So what has to be done will rely on the action on all parties. The occupation of the roads, the blockade of the road, will these be able to achieve universal suffrage of the chief executive in 2017? How should we proceed in the context of the basic law? I hope that those who are concerned about this will think about this issue. I understand that there will be oral questions that will be raised here in this council about constitutional development. I'm sure my fellow colleagues will be able to elaborate further to members. Dr. Fernando Cheung. Mr. Deputy, the Secretary said that we haven't seen any serious injuries since the movement began, and it would be a different story in other jurisdictions. Secretary, are you not happy until you see bloodshed in overseas countries in such a massive event? The regime would have been toppled. Mr. 689 would have stepped down. It would be a different story indeed. Nobody would be as ashamed as Mr. 689. He's hiding in his office and refused to face the public. He's merely appearing in recorded messages. And he gave CCTVB's exclusive interview and said that the use of tear gas, this excessive use of force, was the responsibility or the decision of the field commander. It's got nothing to do with him. Now, it was the field commander who took the decision about the use of force. Mr. Secretary, does the chief executive have any power to halt the excessive use of force? Now, if the field commanders are so gung-ho about the use of force, if the policemen are so gung-ho about the use of force, doesn't the chief executive or the secretary yourself not have the power to stop it? Secretary, the police are well trained. They have the expertise to determine what action should be taken to protect life and limbs and properties. Over the past 10 days or so, we witnessed what happened. Did we see the situation portrayed by Mr. Fernando Cheung ever occur? You mentioned bloodshed. Did we see bloodshed in the movement? I said very clearly at the outset that the use of tear gas and pepper spray by the police was intended to put a distance between the police and the protesters to avoid any physical clashes. The idea was to avoid any physical clashes and to minimize any injuries. I hope that members would have a look at the situation in a broader perspective. The police will hold fast to their professionalism in handling the events. A lot of members expressed concerns over what happened pre-dawn, and I've already explained the situation to members. I hope that I urge members to have faith in our system in Hong Kong. Our system is paramount. Any investigation into any incident will have to follow established procedures. Now, when the Chief Executive and the Secretary for Security witnessed the use of force, did they not have the power to stop it? My question is very clear. Secretary for Security. Mr. Deputy, I've said many times, and I repeat, that the police do have the expertise and their ability to take the decision. Well, the police are always professional, they're always fine, but when things go wrong, didn't you have the ability to stop it? I think the question has been answered. Dr. Elizabeth Kwok. The Occupy movement has been going on for 18 days. This has dealt a blow to people's livelihood. People are really getting increasingly impatient about the Occupy movement. Some said that they're mystified as to why the police didn't arrest these protesters. Instead, they form human chain to stop the anti-occupiers. And they asked me to show their support for the police, and they urged the police to step up and protect Hong Kong. They are very concerned what's going to happen going forward. Will these all end in tragedies?
The Secretary for Security and many others have been trying hard to go to the scene to persuade the protesters to leave. But then there are also many people quite irresponsible, and there are also lawmakers here who are urging the protesters to hold fast. I think we need to resolve the problem. If the occupation is to last, I want to know when the government is going to resolve the problem at root and restore social order. What will be done to prevent a tragedy from happening? Secretary. Since the start of the occupation, the administration has exercised the greatest tolerance, so as to allow citizens who like to express their views to voice their requests. Of course, no one would like to see any conflicts and clashes. But then, when the views are entirely polarized and when they come into close contact, then the police will try as much as possible to separate the crowds. It isn't a matter of protection or not protecting a particular camp. The police has the duty to make sure that the two sides are separated so as to avoid head-on clashes. On the 13th, you saw it on the TV screen that the police had a difficult task going into the crowd, used their own body to create a small passage so as to slowly escort those who are willing to leave to get out of this site. I have already referred your support to the police on your behalf. We are most grateful to your support. For the occupation to end, I think the best way to achieve that is for the protesters to think hard and leave and retreat from the trunk roads peacefully. The blockade isn't just an illegal act, and in fact it has already brought about huge difficulties and nuisance to the society. All sectors of the society are suffering from losses, and the SAR government has already come up with 3 possible sites for the protesters to move to continue with the expression of views. But so far, we haven't received any feedback. I would like to urge them to think, take a look, and come up with a response. Mr. Christopher Chung, Mr. Deputy, since the 28th of September, the illegal Occupy Central movement has caused a lot of students being deceived into class boycott. For the past 2 weeks, the police have been most professional, and they've exercised the greatest degree of self-restraint. They have been working non-stop for over 30 hours. We are all sympathetic towards them. At the district level, a lot of us have a lot of respect for the police. However, I would like to ask the Secretary this question. When the police officers are faced with the thugs and they are using sharp objects, including umbrellas, to charge the police cordon, resulting in police injuries, I want to know, since the 28th of September, how many police officers have suffered injuries and to what extent, how serious are their injuries, and I want to know whether the police, whether the government have ways to make sure that their personal safety will be protected. Secretary, with me, I've got some data, though it may not be entirely sort of complete. The figures are good as at the 12th of October. 156 people were injured, requiring admission to hospital. Among them, 20 police officers. For the police to exercise their duty, all frontline police officers will be given adequate and appropriate protective gear, and that's why they need helmets. They need the round-shaped shields. They need elongated shields. That's the reason behind their personal gear. On a particular evening in Mong Kok, there was one frontline police officer who wasn't armed with a helmet, and as a result, he was injured when a stone was thrown at him, and he had to receive 5 stitches to dress his wound. He did not have to be hospitalized, but then he suffered from this. And the policemen were trying to separate the 2 camps. They used their own bodies to separate the 2 camps. I don't think it's meaningful for me to repeat my answer once again, but I hope that those who are listening, watching the live broadcast of these proceedings, to stop and think as to the way forward. Mr. Kenneth Leung, Secretary, you have been going on for 3 hours. You are losing your voice. If one day the commander at the front line tells you that he has to start firing, then what are you going to do? What is the decision process? The CE, Mr. Lai, Mr. Li Ka-chiu, Andy Zhang, and also the Chinese Liaison Office. I want to know about the role to be played by each of you. Secretary, for the police to exercise their duty, all along they have been adhering to one principle. That is the minimum force, the use of minimum force. Frontline police officers, including commanders, have all been trained. In the past 10 days or so, for the tear gas that they used, pepper spray that they used, shields that they used, or even the police batons used as a precaution. They've all been deployed under the same principle. I believe that the police force as a whole can professionally and appropriately handle the situation and handle what they are faced with. They've exercised restraint. It is obvious to everybody. I hope that members won't just incite a particular incident or try to guess what is going or what may happen to form the basis of your judgment. On the 28th of September, there were news that the police fired rubber bullets. But the fact remains that this wasn't done. For the OC movement, roads were blocked. But I believe that on the 20th of September, it was one of the peaks. And then on the 3rd of October, what happened in Mong Kok also reached a climax. On the following morning, someone asked me as to why the police had not fired tear gas the evening before. This is what I gave in my answer as to what the police is going to do so as to keep a safe distance. The police would have to consider a number of factors, including the geographical factor of the scene. Secondly, in Mong Kok, the roads and streets are narrow, and there are also lots of residents living upstairs on either side of the street. It would not be appropriate to deploy tear gas. The police do exercise professional judgment, and I have faith in their judgment. Therefore, on more than one occasion here, I have stated that the SARG is fully behind the police. Thank you. I did not refer to any specific incidents. I was just saying that, of course, the maximum force would be firing live ammunition, but I just want to know who is going to make the decision. I want to know about the flow. It is just about the standard procedures. Why can't you give us an answer?
I didn't speculate. I didn't assume. Please be seated. You've already asked your question. Any supplement from you, Secretary? The use of force by the police has to follow three principles. First, to achieve lawful purposes and by using the minimum level of force. Second, give warning first before the use of force. And third, where necessary or where possible, where permitted, inform the public or inform the targets. And third, to allow the relevant persons to have the opportunity to comply with the police instruction. Mr. Charles Mock, Mr. Kenneth Leung asked about firing, but you didn't answer that. And the Secretary for Security said that the best solution was for the protesters to pack up and go. This is a political issue. I think the best solution is for C.Y. Leung to pack up and go. So the administration can have a proper dialogue with the students. Now, I am Zhang Kun-chiu. Anyone with conscience in Hong Kong, anyone who loves peace in Hong Kong is Zhang Kun-chiu. And on behalf of Zhang Kun-chiu, anyone and everyone who opposes the violence and brutality of the administration of the force to ask this question. This is a question of principle. Because in your replies, you keep saying that, well, IPCC has already received some cases, and because the public are very concerned about these cases, and the allegations are serious, and therefore the reportable cases will be referred to the Serious Complaints Committee for follow-up action. But in all your written replies and verbal replies, you have been praising the force incessantly. All right. I don't think that what the police has done is entirely wrong, but also not entirely correct. Why are you favoring the police? Why are you trying to connive their misconduct? As a politically accountable officer, shouldn't you maintain a neutral position? So last night, there were some incidents. As a politically accountable officer, won't you say that your connivance has led to what happened last night, leading to the loss of control on the part of some police officers? Shouldn't yourself be held accountable for such behavior because of your connivance? Different legislators are entitled to different views. I disagree with Mr. Charles Mok that we are conniving the police. What the police did was in public eyes. Mr. Mok, if you are focusing on what happened this morning, let me reiterate. The police will certainly conduct a fair investigation through established procedures, fair investigation. Any illegal act would be dealt with in accordance with the law. Thank you. Mr. Tony C. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. This illegal occupation has caused some degree of harm and damage to our society and economy. It has also disrupted the daily lives of many people. I know that I believe other countries and places are very concerned about the whole matter. My question to the Secretary is, has any country or place liaised with our administration through their organizations or representatives present in Hong Kong, trying to understand the latest development through the administration? Have they ever reflected their concerns and worries? For instance, has any government or place advised their citizens not to visit Hong Kong or to have any fair and business dealings with the city, or even to refrain from investing in Hong Kong? I'd like to know whether this has happened, and I'd like to ask measures the administration has taken to ensure that these places are kept in the picture of what is developing here. SECD. As far as I know, no country has issued any travel advisory against Hong Kong, but some has advised their nationals to stay away from places affected by protests when they're in Hong Kong as far as possible. Mr. Tong Li, my follow-up question is, are there measures to ensure that these places and countries can understand the development of events in Hong Kong? Secretary, in my reply to other questions, our ETO, Economic and Trade Officers, have very proactively explained to the media in those places that Hong Kong remains safe. And they've also explained to them the areas affected by protests in Hong Kong so that they can plan their visits better, and they should avoid these places when here as far as possible. Dr. Kenneth Chen, the Secretary for Security, has said time and again that tear gas would only bring a short-term discomfort to protesters. Secretary, have you read a letter by 4 scholars to SCMP, South China Morning Post, and one of the writers is Professor Ronnie Poon, on the effect of tear gas on protesters and the possible health impacts on protesters. So what you said in your reply was not really the truth. On the 27th of September, in the early morning of that day, and on the 28th, I was tear gassed and also sprayed with OC film at Timei Avenue. And this early morning, the clearance operation by the police used lynch to assault some arrested person, Mr. Zhang Qingqiu, who was already controlled with his hands bound behind his back. And from what I saw, the police was very brutal in carrying out the clearance operation. It was violent. Andy Zhang, as the CP, boosted the morale of the police by shouting out now that you have done nothing wrong. So my question to the Secretary is, since the 27th of September till now, the police, including the CP Andy Zhang, have they ever done any psychological assessment whether their mental state is really self-restrained and tolerant as you claimed? Are they really suitable for making police decisions? Secretary, I'm sure every colleague responsible has been working very long hours recently, and I'm sure we are physically and mentally fit to handle the matter. We will not shrink from our duties. Our duty is to restore order in society so that members of the public can lead normal lives. Dr. Kenneth Chen referred to a report which I was aware of, but unfortunately I didn't have time to read it. But I'd like to point out one thing. Tear smoke and OC film are not something manufactured by the Hong Kong police force, nor are they used only by the police force in Hong Kong. Forces all over the world, including developed economies in Europe and in the US, have similar gear. And the ingredients of tear gas and also OC film is just the same, and the guidelines for using them is just the same.
President, so you just need to point out whether he has answered your question or not. So everyone in the police force was fit physically to discharge duty. For the 6 to 7 the police officers which have been redeployed, who were concerned with the incident last night, have you done an assessment of their physical and mental condition? My answer was talking about the senior level of the force. Any individual police officers feels that he or she is emotionally or mentally disturbed, we do have experts to provide appropriate counseling to them. Mr. Albert Chan. President, I must congratulate the Secretary that the police has got the greatest attention from the international media because the central leaders complimented them so much. Wow, you are trying to collude with the triads. Under your leadership, you changed the colonial style of the police management to that of a style adopted in the mainland. So the police is the first department to turn red, so to speak, in Hong Kong. You are destroying the two systems. So you're giving credit for that. You should get the Great Bohemia Award for that. Now, Dr. Kenneth Leung asked about the conditions of the police officers. At Long War Road, I watched myself the performance of the police officers. Most of them were still restrained, but some of them, from their gestures, their facial expressions, and when they saw that the protesters were trying to charge at them, They were chasing after the protesters like mad. This is very worrying. I was just a few feet away from the scene. And when you watch the videotape, the police officers seem to be suffering from early psychosis, and they seem to be ill. Well, I'm a social worker by profession, and I actually studied for it, not like others. So when I was dealing with cases of child abuse, I have handled many cases of workers under pressure, and because they got emotional and they beat up their children. So this can be likened to the situation of the police force today. Now, under so much pressure, the police officers are under because of work pressure get out of control. How can you ensure that they would not bring shame onto the police force? How can you prevent them beating up the protesters? First of all, I can't agree with Mr. Chan saying that the police force is turning red, so to speak. Second, frontline commanders, if they identify colleagues who are mentally stressed or distressed, they would deal with it appropriately. Well, the police do have clinical psychologists and social workers to deal with such cases. Mr. Albert Chan said that he was just a few feet away from the scene, but what I can say for sure is that the police does have a good record. We have a history of over 170 years. We have good traditions, good culture, and the police in Hong Kong, among forces in other parts of the world, is considered one of the best teams. So I can't accept Mr. Albert Chan's criticisms. So he hasn't answered your question. Well, perhaps, Mr. Albert Chan, you just say what question he hasn't answered yet. He doesn't answer my question about this grave situation, and that is many police officers are under great pressure, and then they have some mental disorders. So do you have a new mechanism or a new approach to deal with such cases so that their cases can be identified early? So you have already raised your question. Please be seated. Mr. Albert Chan, please take your seat. Secretary, any supplement? If the frontline commanders discover that there are colleagues with emotional problems, they will tackle the cases appropriately. Well, they should identify the cases early, or else it will be very disastrous, and there's no use getting remorseful afterwards. Mr. Wong Kwok Ka-ki, the FTU, towards the police dedication to their work, we want to show our support and appreciation towards them. The OCM has lasted for 18 days, and the cause, the underlying reason is it's an organized and move with influence by the foreign powers, and this is an umbrella revolution. And this term is also coined by the next media group of Jimmy Lai. And Jimmy Lai also said on many occasions that he is dishing out money to the democratic camps for staging this Hong Kong version of the color revolution. So here, I would like the administration to respond. Will the government conduct a full-scale investigation and follow-up, and urge the law enforcement bodies to strictly enforce the law, including using the prevention of bribery ordinance to see whether there is any corruption involved, using the tax law, inland revenue ordinance, whether there is any tax evasion, and companies using a registered company to engage in illegal activities. Secretary, all law enforcement bodies in Hong Kong will act on reports in accordance with the laws. Mr. Tan Ka-ki. Dr. Priscilla Leung. President, many demonstrators harbored hatred to the police, and the Pt2 wrote an article urging people not to cooperate with the police office. And there were banners saying that, asking the police to go on strike as well. So imagine if the police boycott, who will be the happiest? That would be the bad elements. If the police's morale is dealt a blow, well, we as Hong Kong people should be most worried. Now, today, the police force is under a lot of criticisms. Their duty is to enforce the law, and they should not be the enemy of the protesters. Well, if we hold different opinions, we should try to resolve and express our opinions peacefully. And the police are sort of sandwiched in between the two groups of people. Well, Dr. Leung, please come to your question. Let me finish first, President. First of all, if the police officers have gone overboard, I am sure that under your your guidelines you would conduct an investigation. What I'm worried is that about the morale of the police officers. Some of them are very young. Well, they are subject to all sorts of criticisms. They are not just under pressure. They are being insulted. So when these officers first joined the police, they didn't expect such things to happen. So they would harbor fear, so to speak, if they enforce the law. So what can you do to boost police's morale and also try to reestablish the relationship between the police and the people of Hong Kong? Secretary, we act with fairness, impartiality, and justly, and we will not give favor to anybody. And whatever we do, there is only one principle, and that is we treat everyone equal and alike. These are the basic or fundamental principles that we uphold. And police officers should be able to deal with the difficulties impartially and fairly.
This is an unprecedented difficulty and challenge that we are facing. I'm grateful to many members of the public and many groups. For days on end, they have given their support to the police and what they have done. As the Secretary for Security, I have my full support for the police in enforcing the law. Thank you. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Mr. Deputy, in answering Mr. K.K. Fung's question, this is what the Secretary said. Just imagine, once the police cordon was broken through by piles and layers of crowds formed by thousands of protesters and with swarms of crowds crushing their way forward, the dire consequence of a stampede involving a large number of falls, trampling, accidents, serious injuries, or even fatalities was highly probable. The police were therefore bound to take immediate measures to keep the crowds at a safe distance in order to avoid heavy casualties that might result from any scuffles or charging acts. Mr. Deputy, if you look at the reply by the Secretary, well, it's not just by imagination, and it cannot be farther from the truth. In fact, at different levels, what we have seen is that the crowds were cordoned off by the barricades and yet police officers were spraying pepper spray against them, and in some cases they've actually taken or removed any thing that is standing in a way of them, and they spray straight into their eyes. And last night they even removed the eye mask and spray into their eyes. So are these police officers that have been professionally trained to do so? And also yesterday on Timei Avenue, I was looking at the police officers, and they rushed into the crowds and fire tear gas. Just imagine if you go into the crowds and fire tear gas at them, then just imagine the heat from the tear gas. That would also cause casualties, and they could also be injured. Fortunately, there was no serious injuries. But then, are we talking about officers that have been professionally trained to do so? And my question is that have there been orders made by CY Leung for the field commanders to fire tear gas? Secretary. This is a picture that we downloaded from the web. You can see that there is a row of police officers, and then in front of them, I cannot count how many rows of people there were, and they were charging at the police cordon line, as you can see here. Well, the barricades that should have been there between the police officers and the crowds were already removed. So they were charging at the police cordon line. Just imagine if they continue like that, what kind of situation will result or will follow. The police fire tear gas. On this particular issue, I have repeatedly answered the question many times, and I don't propose to repeat that again here. The only point that I'd like to stress here is that keeping a safe distance from the crowds is the best way to deal with the situation. And on that particular day, the actions that were taken by the police achieved that purpose. Mr. Ip Kin Yuen, Mr. Leung Yiu-chung, the Secretary has not answered my question at all. I was asking him, all right, removing people's eye masks and spray directly into their eyes, was that professionally trained? And also rushing into the crowds to fire tear gas, was that also professionally trained? And also, did CY Leung issue the order to the field commander to fire tear gas at the crowds? So you can only ask one supplementary. You've asked a series of questions. That's many in one question. Secretary, Mr. Deputy, I've answered that question many times. For the frontline police officers, well, at the circumstance, they had to make a professional judgment as to which force would be the most appropriate force to use, and that's their professional decision. Mr. Ip Kin Yuen, Mr. Deputy, we all understand that for frontline police officers, they are encountering a lot of difficulty because they are torn between the two sides. While the administration has not made any attempt at all to resolve the political problem, inevitably they will have to face with this conflict with the crowds, and that's why they are facing a lot of difficulty. That can be appreciated. But then, whatever the difficulty may be, we are very concerned about the professionalism of police officers on the ground. All right, let's say there is a teacher. He has difficulty facing the students, and if his decision is to beat them up, and nobody would agree that this is in line with the teacher's professionalism. So how are we supposed to deal with them? All right. If you say that we will just conduct an internal disciplinary investigation to deal with them, and then he will be deployed to another class to teach, would that be acceptable? So after we have reported on the case, and when the police officers arrive at the scene, then the teacher will definitely be dealt with in a criminal manner, or will be dealt with as a criminal case. All right. Yesterday, what we have heard is that they would be conducting internal investigation, and the officer will be redeployed to the other posts, will that be able to appease the public? All right, if this is an act committed by an individual officer, but then under the system, if the police are not able to tackle the problem under the system, then that would become a systemic problem, and that would only bring disgrace to the reputation of the police. So my question for the Secretary is this: are you aware of the fact that why have the police not chosen to resort to criminal procedures in dealing with a police officer, and on what basis have they taken that decision? And as the Secretary for Security, would you accept that approach? Secretary. My Undersecretary just reminded me, he was in the police force, and he said that under the capo system, there were criminal investigations. I've repeatedly said that the police will conduct a fair investigation into the case, and if any unlawful acts have been committed, they will act accordingly. They would deal with the case accordingly. Where there is a system, we have to follow the system. We cannot just rely on individual or personal judgments. Tan Ka-pil, I'm concerned about traffic and also the driver's livelihood. Well, in question number 5, that is a question asked by Mr. Tam Yiu-chung. We were told that there was an increase in patronage of the MTR by 13%, but then for the OCM, other than students who have to sleep on the streets, many drivers' livelihood has also suffered. That's a big problem. So my question is, have you contacted the franchise bus operators or the tram operator, whether or not they are able to come up with the worst case scenario? And if the OCM continues for a certain period of time, they might be facing pressure. They might have to increase fares. So have you contacted them on that? Secretary, well, during the past fortnight or so, as I said in response to Mr. Tam Yiu-chung's question, the public transport system has suffered and has encountered tremendous pressure because many members of the public do have to travel, and if they are not able to use certain bus routes and take their usual mode of transport, then they will have to reroute and take alternative mode instead. That's why different public transport operators have encountered a lot of pressure. Other than some 2,800 frontline staff who have been working in accordance with the regular schedule in the MTR system, the MTRCL has already additionally deployed some 400 frontline staff to work on the station. With regard to the chaos and also the congestion that have been caused, and also the blockage, that will have to be resolved shortly, or else the entire system will be subject to a lot more pressure, and in the end that might become unbearable. Well, different institutions and organizations are now assessing the impact on their business, and of course for some PLB drivers, taxi drivers, yes, they have talked to the Transport Department about their problem.
Over the past 10 days or so, we have been liaising with the operators on more than 100 occasions. We heard their sentiments. In answer to members' questions, Mr. Lai, the Secretary for Security, already said that this is unprecedented. I fully appreciate the aspirations of the protesters, but as they said, political issues have to be resolved politically. The blocking of roads will not be the answer to the problem. We have to find ways to tackle the issue. Mr. Chen Hanpan, Mr. Deputy, things are so chaotic and people are polarized and people's livelihood is affected. I would have thought that the pandemic request would urge the protesters to withdraw. Instead, they're feeling the situation, they're causing greater divisiveness, and they are showing the true colors. My question is, according to all the information, this illegal occupation is orchestrated for the protesters to occupy the roads, and storming the police cordon, causing injuries to policemen and the protesters, and this is also causing losses on the part of the members of the public. The police said that this occupation is illegal. For those orchestrating storming action at police cordon, and they're causing the feeling social divisiveness. Some said that they are taking money from overseas to create all these scenes. Will the police take action to follow up on these, to stop them in the tract, so that people's interests will not be undermined? Secretary for Security. The law enforcement agencies will conduct investigation and follow up in relation to illegal acts. Mr. Tam Yiu-chung. Mr. Deputy, the relevant officials are not here for my question, but I put this nonetheless. For the catering trade, we had a meeting, we had a press conference recently, and Mr. Tam Yiu-chung put a similar question. This Occupy movement has really undermined the business of the catering trade. The trade has a number of requests in relation to the government. First, we hope that, like what we did during the SARS epidemic, a loan scheme should be launched for the operators. We hope that the mechanism should be on the basis of what we did during the SARS epidemic, like the interest rate and also the repayment schedule and so on. During the SARS crisis, the government waived the license fees for the caterers. The FHD fees and charges were waived during the SARS period. I am not sure whether you will pass on these comments to the Secretary for Food and Health, Mr. Dr. Ko Wing-man. The catering trade is teetering on the brink. I don't think we can survive any longer unless there is any support from the government. SED, Mr. Deputy, I said earlier on that during the SARS epidemic, there was a guarantee scheme for 3 months to help the retail trade, the catering trade, tourism trade, and the entertainment business. Now, we had the SME loan guarantee scheme. In 2003, we didn't have this loan guarantee scheme, and we do have some preferential scheme for the trade. If the trade suffers from any problems, they are welcome to apply for the loan guarantee scheme. I heard what Mr. Tam Yiu-chung said. This is an extraordinary time. We will be liaising with the trade. We will deal with the issues in a flexible manner with a view to helping them as much as possible. Mr. Kwok Ka-ki. Mr. Deputy, of the 5 urgent questions, only Mr. Tam Yiu-chung asked questions about the impacts on the livelihood. For the other 4 put by the Pan Democrats, they put questions in order to undermine the police morale and show support for these protesters. I think they are giving or throwing the weight behind the protesters. I must take this opportunity to show my respect for the police. They cleared the road last night so that we can use them today during our commute to and from work. Now, there was a question about the SME's difficulties, and there is talk of extraordinary measures for the trade. This is necessary because of the impact arising from the movement. Now, for the wage earners, they are having a hard time. Will they be given any assistance? The bus drivers, the taxi drivers, the tram drivers, and insurance agents, retail, tourism, hotel, and construction trade, those workers who are out of a job, will there be any measures to help them? If not, will these workers be given any assistance or living from hand to mouth? Will they be able to claim any compensation from the relevant people? Who's going to take the question? SHA? Mr. Deputy, we understand that because of the road occupation, some people are suffering losses financially. And they are seeking compensation through the Small Claims Tribunal. And we understand that there are some civil organizations that are helping these sufferers to seek compensation. There are some small traders that have already started this kind of action. Ms. Alice Mack. Mr. Deputy, there was a question directed at the Secretary regarding whether the police officers had to seek your permission for the action. I think common sense dictates that they would not, because they would not halt their action and seek permission first. Now, the police officers have to make their professional judgment. We have to have faith in their judgment in taking action. Now, my question is, a lot of the police officers have been working extraordinarily long time, solidly. Now, will you tell us some statistics as to how long they have to be on duty for without any break? Now, there are some police officers in other districts that have to cancel all their leave. Now, will this movement only affect the police force arrangement in these affected areas, or is it the case that you have to deploy manpower from other police districts? And will the law and order in these other areas be undermined as a result?
Secretary, I can tell Ms. Mack that the police will deploy manpower appropriately. Other than the incidents occurring at the occupied areas, the police have always been able to maintain a normal level of manpower in other areas of the territory. We are faced with a challenge, and the police officers have to work longer hours, and also as a result, their leave arrangements have been and will be affected. But I firmly believe that the police will be able to maintain the law and order in Hong Kong. As I have already said, we can all see that despite the large-scale blockade activities going on in many corners, the law and order in Hong Kong is just the same as usual. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Many operators and citizens have told me that they're grateful to the police for their hard work in their past, and they're also fully supportive of the police in their future operations in discharging their duties. The occupation has been going on for 18 days. Now, for the occupied protesters and supporters have said that they will stop immediately when there is violence breaking out. But we can see that they are fanning the emotions. Our daily lives have been affected. What's worse is that SMEs have been affected, in particular SMEs operating in the affected areas. They have to pay rent. They have to pay wages. They have to pay the overhead cost. How much longer can they make do? If we're able to provide some assistance to them, it will be fine. But I don't think this is sustainable. Therefore, my question is Does the administration have a timetable or a roadmap to resolve the stalemate that we're faced with so as to restore order in the society early? Who's going to take this question? Secretary for Security, please. Restoring social order is our common goal that we are all working hard towards. The protests and the occupation have brought along many problems. As a result, citizens have come up with very strong views, and it is visible. The administration has made it clear. First, we hope that the Occupy protesters will leave the protest areas. And second, we have suggested 3 possible venues for them to go to continue with the expression of their views. We are still going to exercise the greatest degree of restraint, and we hope that we can properly handle the matter as early as possible so as to return to our normal living. Mr. Raymond Chen. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Millions of citizens in Hong Kong or even all over the world, we have already watched this particular video clip. 6 police officers, after arresting a protester and having subdued him by tying up his hands behind his back with the bridles, he was dragged to a dark corner and he was roughed up. It is not excessive violence. This is torture. This is excessive violence. And yet the police would only deploy them to other duties instead of arresting them, instead of stopping them, suspending them from duty. It's been said that there weren't just 6. In fact, there was a 7th police officer wearing eyeglasses. Please clarify how many have been arrested, 5, 6, or 7? A retired policeman watched the video footage and he was really saddened. He said that usually such took place inside a police station. Usually the violence would not be executed on the scene, even if it couldn't be helped. It would be sort of taking place inside a dark corner or behind the scene. So he would like to know whether something has been spelled out in the guidelines. So they have gone out of control. I think, in fact, there was a police officer who was acting as an observer. He couldn't even notice the red light of the camera that was used to shoot the footage. I think all mechanisms, all institutions have collapsed. Maybe the police officers couldn't control themselves. I want to know what contingency measures, what emergency measures you have got, so as to make sure that police officers who are on duty, who are enforcing the law in this exercise, will not go out of control and resort to torture and even in the full view of the world and blatantly. The police have already started investigation into this matter. I think at this stage, any emotional expression of views would not help. Our police force isn't quite like what Mr. Chen has described. For this incident, this will be fairly and objectively looked into. Time and again, I have already said that this is our system. If we don't follow a system when we do our work, then many of the time it will generate unexpected outcomes. I don't think people of Hong Kong would like to see this emerging. Mr. Deputy, he hasn't answer to my question. The system has collapsed. So what is to be done? How many have been redeployed? 5, 6, or 7? We just want to know the number. You only need to point out which part hasn't been answered, Secretary. I can't agree that the management of the police force or other aspects have collapsed. As Mr. Chen has mentioned, I don't think you should exaggerate the matter out of proportion as to how many police officers have been involved. But then I came here at 10:40, 10:45 this morning, so I haven't got the information with me. Are you going to supplement? How many police officers have been redeployed? You can't even give us the number. Don't you have a telephone? Don't you have WhatsApp? Well, you already said that it wasn't your question as to how many were involved, but he couldn't give me the emergency measures. I think he's answered your question. Mr. Abraham Shack. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I agree very much with what the Secretary has said. Our police force is a very excellent force in Asia and even in the world. I believe and I agree that the students out there are sincere, they are committed, and what they're doing outside is something that they are having faith in, and they would like to find a solution. They would like to find an answer. Among the 70 of us here, if we are trying to find out who's in the right, who's in the wrong, I don't think this is the right time. I think we should lead the students out of the Red Sea, just like in the Bible. History will judge who's right and wrong. Now, I need to declare, Mr. Deputy, I'm a member. In fact, I'm the Deputy Chairman of the Independent Police Complaints Committee. And I'm also the chair for the IPCC, and I'm the chair of the committee looking into serious complaints. I know that there are already hundreds of complaints, and they will just grow in number. For the complainants and the complainees, if we want to deal with the complaints fairly, Secretary, are you going to increase resources and manpower for CAPO so as to finish the investigation ASAP? And then we need to support the IPCC in vetting the complaints. I think you can answer this question it's just a simple yes or no.
Secretary for Security, Mr. Sheikh. If the manpower of CAPO is insufficient, the police has got a mechanism to deploy more manpower to the CAPO, and in my main reply, the police will cooperate with the investigation. And if IPCC requires more manpower, there is an established mechanism for IPCC to apply for resources from the government to increase its resources. Mr. Sheikh. Yes, this is exceptional times. We need exceptional means. Now, because we must raise with time, to be fair to both the complainants and complainees, in fact, most of the people being complained against are police officers. To be fair to them, well, complainants would also like to know whether their complaints are substantiated or not. If you adhere to your usual mechanism, you won't be able to cope. It would take years before the cases can be fully investigated. Secretary, any supplement? I note Mr. Sheikh's comments. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, this is one of the 87 canisters of tear gas. Occupy Central has brewed for more than a year, and there is also the Operation Solar Peak to handle Occupy Central. I'd like to know whether the police have ever reported to the CE in its operation as to how it is going to disperse the crowd. And in such reports, was the CE aware was of the circumstances under which tear gas would be used. And in these reports, had the CE ever given any instructions to the police, Secretary for Security? Police operations and internal meetings of the administration are usually not disclosed in detail. However, I can say that there are principles for the use of force by the police, and these principles are well established long time ago, not today or yesterday. The usual force, such as tear gas and pepper spray, are part of its normal accoutrement. It's not something new. And therefore, in each operation, the police would, based on its training and their professionalism, to make an assessment on the ground to make a decision. Thank you. The Secretary has not answered my question. My question is very simple. Has the police ever reported to the CE under what circumstances would tear gas be fired? Secretary, I already answered to Mr. Sin Chung-kai's question. Mr. Lam Tai-fai, I've always called upon the protesters and the police to be calm and restrained to avoid any scuffles and bloodshed. I think, being a civilized society, Hong Kong would not accept any use of violence to suppress violence. Secretary, my question is very simple. It is as simple as that. The occupation has taken place for so long. How is the government going to end the matter? If the administration has no proper plan to end this movement, then there will be day in, day out scuffles and conflicts. Our economy and people's livelihood will be harmed, and the police will be caught in the victim, and protesters, even driven away, will come back again. So I'd like to ask the police if it has got plans A, B, or C for an entire clearance. Has it got any planned time frame? I'm sure this is the question of concern to everyone in Hong Kong, because the police have been asking the protesters to retreat voluntarily. I think this is very unrealistic. Secretary, the whole thing is very complicated and unprecedented, and things are changing every minute. So the police have to take gradual actions in the light of the actual circumstances. A few days ago, we started our operations. We lobbied for protesters to go, for them not to block our roads and to open them up again, and to be followed by an operation to clear the barricades that would continue until all related roads in Hong Kong are open to traffic again, so that people can gradually lead normal lives again. And I've also suggested to protesters that they should go to the Tamar Park or Victoria Park, the lawn there, or McPherson Park and Mong Kok for their rallies. Of course, we very much want them to end their rallies. But should they want to, at least we ask them to go to these sites so that people's lives would not be disrupted. Everyone in Hong Kong would like to live peacefully and cordially. I very much hope that the rallying masses can think twice about my suggestion. Mr. Lam Tai-fai, obviously, the Secretary has not answered the question closest to the hearts of everyone in Hong Kong. My question is, do they have any plan and timetable for a complete clearance? Clearance, not for people to retreat voluntarily. Secretary would take appropriate action at appropriate time. Mr. Michael Tian, On SCMP this morning, a senior barrister said the freedom of assembly of protesters is protected under the basic law, and yet occupying public space is a criminal offense. And he said that in the Court of Final Appeal, there's this ruling.
With free passage along a highway does not take away its protection under Article 27, unless the interference caused is unreasonable in the sense of exceeding what the public can reasonably be expected to tolerate. 今日係佔中嘅第18。
We're already 18 days into the occupation. Many residents have reflected to me that then things have gone far beyond a state that the community can reasonably be expected to tolerate. And Mr. Tam Yiu-chung, Mr. Benny Tai, said openly a number of times that participants of Occupy Central would not resist when faced with police operation, and he believed that the police won't have to use too much resources to tackle that. Although Mr. Benny Tai attended the same school, DBS, as I did. However, in Hong Kong, we take pride in the spirit of rule of law. I'd like to ask the Secretary for Security, how come there is no arrest of the 3 organizers of Occupy Central in particular? They promised that they would not resist any arrest. This is such a simple enforcement action, and things have gone beyond the point that can be tolerated by the public. In fact, the law allows us to take action, and many people out there would like us to enforce the law. If you allow the situation to go on, then Hong Kong will not be governable. So can please, Secretary, explain how come the 3 organizers are not yet arrested? Secretary for Security. Mr. Michael Tian quoted from a court ruling. I also studied that. In fact, this morning, when I answered the first urgent question by Mr. K.K. Fung in the first paragraph, I already quoted that. And that is the right or the freedom of peaceful assembly, possession, so on and so forth, are not absolute. Should there be unreasonable obstruction to people's daily life, that means the protection for the assembly concerned under basic law would be lost. I'm sure the majority of Hong Kong agree that the obstruction of roads has gone beyond that limit, and people from different sectors have seriously pointed this out. Occupy Central has happened due to a number of underlying factors. Still, the police will certainly investigate into any unlawful acts and take appropriate action at appropriate times.
Mr. Michael Tian, the Secretary hasn't answered my question on the fact that the 3 co-founders of the Occupy Central movement said that they're not going to put up a fight. So how come up to date they are still at large, and then no arrest has been made? Please point out your question. Come to your question. I'm just talking about the Occupy Central trio. At this electrical meeting, it is inappropriate for me to give an answer relating to a specific person. Mr. James To, in the government's response to the 28th September incident, it said that the senior government officials, including CE and myself, the Secretary for Security and the Commissioner of Police, have been closely watching the developments. My question is simple, President. To my understanding, CE, Mr. Leung, has authorized or tacitly consented that the police could use real guns if necessary. So can the government confirm this? Yes, Secretary. On the use of force, the government has stringent controls and guidelines. Action will be taken based on that guideline and also the actual condition or situation on site, and then a decision will be made. In taking enforcement action, well, they are not departing from the guidelines. On the night of the 28th of September, in the media, there were rumors circulating saying that the police would use arms or guns and will use rubber bullets. And that is because of this warning flag. The police has immediately made clarification. Well, there was no such a thing. Thank you, President. Mr. James To. My question is not related to the warning flag in the evening. My question was on your plans made beforehand. After 3 p.m., when the CE had hosted a press conference, and the anti-riot police were there at 6 p.m., has the CE authorized or tacitly consented that, if necessary, guns can be fired? I've already said that we are just equipped with the usual gear, and the use of force by the police, whether it is at the time referred to by Mr. James To, the guidelines remain the same. Mr. Charles Mock. According to the interpretation, Mr. Charles Mock, a moment, please. You have to press a button to raise a question. Mr. Charles Mock. Well, perhaps you should ask whether members would like to ask further questions first. Can you use your discretion to lengthen the question time? I pressed the button, but I couldn't get it working. Mr. Paul Chair. I think has been difficult for the Secretary because he spent hours answering our questions. At this critical juncture, where Hong Kong was in chaos, everybody should be self-restrained, would not be inciting other people. And the incident last night, many members paid attention to it. Well, we had to take a balanced view of the incident. The background is not yet known, and criticisms could only make things worse. So I agree that we should not come to a conclusion too soon. And we should not be asking questions as to when the police will clear the protest sites and so on. But the incident last night had highlighted the tipping point of every party concerned. You tried to get more time to deal with the incident, or there have been other suggestions that we should be more resolute in our action and to prevent the situation from deteriorating. My question is, the police and the administration, after what happened last night, would they review when the tipping point will be, what the strategy should be, and what the guidelines should be? Thank you, Mr. Chair. The police will be closely watching the developments the issue is unprecedented and extremely complicated. So the police deployment would depend on the real situation at the time. Suddenly, some protesters rushed out to the carriageway of Long Wall Street or Long Wall Road. This is a major trunk road, and all of a sudden, the road was blocked. The police tried to ask people to go back to the pedestrian walk, but to no avail. And so they took action in 3 a.m. and then reopened the road. So for on many occasions, we had to make on-site decisions based on the actual decision. So what we would do our best to maintain law and order. So this is the direction that we would be working towards. Many colleagues, they haven't had a chance to take a rest for the past 10 days or so, and they only have one objective, and that is they hope to restore the order in Hong Kong as soon as possible. In order to achieve that, apart from the police's work, members of the public should support us. And the stakeholders should also play a part. So this is the last urgent question raised. Let me say one more thing. Hong Kong is everybody's home, including my home. I was born. I grew here and grew up here. And for the past several decades, we faced a number of difficulties. Should we cherish our home? Thank you, President. Point of order. To give time to those who have pressed the button and yet not here to ask questions, I call for a quorum. Members can point out to me that there isn't a quorum, but then waiting for a member to come back to ask a question is not a reason, good enough reason.
梁國雄議員，請你提出補充質詢。
Hon Kwok, you may now ask your supplementary questions. Well, the Bureau Director is not here. So long as we have government officials here, they can answer your questions. Well, just now, he said that only those who were there, who were present there, can speak. Mr. Hon Kwok, please ask your supplementary. All right, he's back. All right, you managed to come back in a timely manner. All right, Bureau Director, your reply reminds me of what's been said. All right, stand up for those who are not willing to be slaves, and therefore we will have to build a new city wall with our blood and flesh. Please ask your question. President, I'm sure you've watched the TV footage. Well, that's shown on TVB. I'm sure you must have watched the TVB news broadcast live, and therefore you must not beat people up with your fists, and you should not be kicking them and so on. Well, please be precise and concise, Mr. Hon Kwok. Please ask your question. All right, you've beaten him up, and I've known Ken Chung for years, and he never was someone who would resort to violence. And then we could see very vividly that you were actually kicking and beating him up, even though the TV camera was filming you. All right, I think we do have a very important constitutional status to monitor what you've been doing. Even the IPCC would not have been able to do that. Bureau Director, if your staff i.e. police officers who have been surrounded by protesters, and if they were being beaten up by the protesters, would you think that that's proper? Well, yesterday I was there, and you said that only those who were present there would be eligible to speak. All right. Actually, the protesters were surrounding the police, and the policeman was actually released by the protesters. Actually, we tried to use our own bodies to confront you. And then when you had sufficient reinforcement, you abuse your power. Mr. Leung, please ask your question immediately. Please do not make speeches and make comments. Please ask your question right away. Bureau Director, you said that you've redeployed or transferred the police officer concerned. Well, for the 5 or 6 police officers who lost control, all right, that's the mistake of C.Y. Leung. If he had stepped down earlier on, then that would not have created this problem. So I was saying that C.Y. Leung should have stepped down. Please ask your question. Mr. President, can you ask the Bureau Director, what's your view? For the 5, 6, or 7 officers, I don't know the exact number. All right, for the police officers to stay in a police force to deal with anything that has to do with the public, would that be in line with what you said? That is, they will have to act in strict accordance with the principle of enforcing the law fairly. And if they do not resign, then Andy Zhang should resign. And if Andy Zhang refuses to resign, then you should resign instead. Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, please sit down. Can you hear what I said? I asked a question. So my question is very simple. All right, if the 5 or 6 police officers involved in the incident who try to beat up a member of the public, and if they can stay in their post, then would you still be allowed to, would you have to be accountable for that? So would you still have the nerve to stay on? Lam Kwok Hong, you will have to sit down.
Secretary for Security. President, the police will adopt the same yardstick, the same standard in dealing with any incident. I said before, and I say again, that the police are dealing with this issue in a fair and impartial manner. Nobody would like to see a situation where, until an issue has been dealt with in a fair and impartial manner, a conclusion should be drawn. And this is the procedural integrity that we cherish in Hong Kong. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I think the Secretary has already answered your question. Mr. Leung, this is an urgent question, supplementary to urgent question. There shouldn't be any more supplementary. Please be seated. Mr. Leung, you are breaching the rules of procedure. Please take a seat. Mr. Leung, you have to stop. Mr. Leung. Mr. Leung, this is a warning. If you don't stop, I'll order you out of the chamber. Please take a seat. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Leung, please take a seat. Mr. Gary Fan, President. The Occupy movement has been going on for more than 10 days. Now, for those unarmed protesters, the police have resorted to tear gas, batons, pepper spray, and so on. For those who are against the Occupy movement, the police have condoned the tri-elements to move in on the protesters. That the chief executive has repeatedly trying to divide the communities, turning people against the people. The more divided the community is, see why Leung thinks that he will be able to have a secure job. Is it the case that the government, through the use of force by the police, the government is trying to create chaos, to provoke people in such a way that the Beijing government can bring in the PLA and bring this event bring this to an end with bloodshed? Mr. Fan, you've put your question. Please take a seat. Secretary for Security. President, in the 18 days of the Occupy movement, the police have been exercising utmost restraint. We never sided with any side of the movement, the pro and anti-protesters. Sorry, Secretary, just a reminder that members have to comply with the rules of procedure. If they are shouting in the seat, you'll be ordered out of the chamber. Please continue, Secretary. On the night of the 3rd of October, the police formed a human chain and escorted those protesters who wished to leave the scene. And this is a clear example. In Mong Kok, members also mentioned Admiralty. The police took action in a timely manner and made some arrests. And this goes to show that what Mr. Gary Fan said is really not true. Mr. Fan, is it the case that through the police abusing the power, the government is trying to create chaos so as to bring in the PLA to deal with the mess? Yes or no? Mr. Fan, I think the Secretary has already answered your question. Ms. Claudia Mo. President, thank you. This afternoon, we spent 257 minutes, more than 4 hours, on this very subject. Whoever stands up to put questions, the Secretary would be repeating himself that the police are committed to protecting the members of the public and dealing with the issues in a fair and impartial manner. It's been droning on like this. What argument are you advancing? I've been listening to this in the antechamber. Some members spend a long time putting questions. Why is it that I've only been speaking for just less than a minute and I was stopped? Mr. Deputy was here and he allowed everybody to take the floor for as long as they like. Your question, please. President. Now, last night, the police abused power. They were taking the law into their own hands. Now, force is force. You will not be abusing force. I think the police were abusing their power. And you said that you would be fair and impartial in dealing with the issue. And you said they've been taken out of their posting at the moment. Have they been suspended? I'm not sure how I should put it in Chinese for suspend. Have they been suspended or have they been redeployed? Now, this is a significant question. Now, if you were to say it instead of being posted on Hong Kong Island, they've been posted to Kowloon, that would be another matter altogether. Right, you're done with the question, Ms. Bo. I've got one more question. You said that the police form a human chain. We respect the police ourselves, but we have to bear in mind that the protesters and the members of the public are also using their flesh and blood. Well, everybody is made up of flesh and blood, so the police action was intended to avoid any physical clashes and to minimize any chances of people getting hurt. A lot of members have focused their attention on the pre-dawn incident, and they raised many questions there. And my reply has been very clear. Let me repeat what I said. The police will conduct fair investigation. If there was any irregularity, they will be dealing with it in accordance with the law. The relevant police officers have been taken out of the current posts. Well, have they been suspended, or have they been just redeployed? Secretary, I think what I said is cannot be clearer. Mr. Hon Kwok, President, the Occupy movement has been going on for more than 10 days. Over the past 3 weeks, since the 28th of September, the police have been stormed and charged. On many occasions, the police were very professional. They exercised a great deal of restraint, and they're praiseworthy. On many occasions, they were subject to verbal abuse and uncivilized treatment. Some doctors refused them treatment, and some teachers insulted the policemen's children, but they were committed to their job, to the safety of the residents, and also the protesters were illegally occupying the roads. Last night, we saw the gathering of the crowd obstructing the traffic. Police reacted rapidly to restore normal traffic. The frontline policemen have been working very hard. They're working flat out. My question is, other than showing our support and respect for the police, I'd like to put a question as to whether there is any psychological counseling, whether there is any additional resources for the frontline officers so that they can maintain their professionalism and to avoid a situation where the frontline policemen were not overreacting to the situation.
Secretary, the police do have appropriate arrangements in this regard. 5 urgent questions and a large number of supplementary questions have been asked, and they have come to an end. Now we go into the 6 oral questions scheduled for this sitting. Question 1, Dr. Honorable Fernando Cheung.